Iowa.
Today, Senator Johnson and I begin a series of speeches on our investigations into the Biden family financial deals. We'll make these presentations with two themes. First, we'll refute and we'll dismantle the talking points that the liberal media and our Democrat colleagues pushed onto the American people. Their talking point said that our investigations over the years advanced and spread Russian disinformation. On November 29th, 2021, May the 11th, 2021, March the 18th, 2021, December the 14th, 2020, December the 10th, 2020, October the 19th, 2020, and September the 29th, 2020. I came to this Senate floor to rebut those false charges. Now, or at least then, the liberal media and my Democrat colleagues ought to be ashamed of themselves for the outright lies that they peddled about our investigative work. As a result, Senator Johnson and I did what any good investigator would do. We gathered even more records to prove all these people wrong. Which brings me to the second theme. Senator Johnson and I will produce new records to show additional connections between the Biden family and the communist Chinese regime. Before we get to those records, I'm going to discuss the background of our investigation. We started this investigation last Congress. Then I was chairman of the Finance Committee, and at that time, Senator Johnson was chairman of the Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs Committee. It began in August 2019. I started at that time an inquiry into a transaction involving Hunter Biden that was reviewed by the federal government's Committee on Foreign Investment. On September 23, 2020, Senator Johnson and I released our report. On November the 18th, 2020, we released our supplement to that report. Those reports were based in a large part on Obama administration government records and also almost a dozen transcribed interviews of government officials. In both reports, Senator Johnson and I made financial information public that hadn't ever been known before. Our report exposed extensive financial relationships between Hunter and James Biden and Chinese nationals connected to the communist regime. More precisely, these were Chinese nationals connected to the Chinese government's military and intelligence service. One of those individuals was a person by the name of Patrick Ho. According to reports, Hunter Biden said of Patrick Ho, quote, "I have another New York Times reporter calling about my representation of Patrick Ho." Then Hunter Biden says the F word, denoting a spy chief of China who started a company that my partner, who was worth $323 billion, founded and is now missing. End of that quote. We'll get into more detail with respect to Patrick Ho in future speeches. We'll do the same with Gongwen Dong, another close associate of Hunter Biden's, who was connected to the communist regime. Now, Hunter Biden's reference to, quote, my partner, end quote, is an apparent reference to Yi Jinping. Yi had connections to the People's Liberation Army. Yi had a company called CEFC, which had multiple variations. Today and in future speeches, Senator Johnson and I will simply refer to that company as CEFC. Documents show that CEFC's corporate mission was, quote, to expand cooperation in the international energy economy and contribute to national development, end of quote. Now let me emphasize that word national in that quote, national development. CEFC existed for the communist state. Indeed, records show that CEFC is dedicated itself to serve China's national energy strategy, developing national strategic reserves for oil, and now I quote, partnering with centrally administered and state-owned enterprises, end of quote. Records prepared by one of Hunter and James Biden's business associates, a James Gilliar, say the following about this company, CEFC. Quote, at the time, China was hungry for crude, but its state-backed companies were having difficulty closing some deals abroad. The optics of China's state-backed giants marching into a country to buy and extract oil weren't great for Central Asian politicians. This paved the way for private firms like CEFC, which can strike oil deals in Europe and the Middle East, where Chinese state-owned enterprises could bring political liabilities, end of quote. Documents also show that CEFC, quote, is building an energy storage and logistics system in Europe, end of quote, to connect China, Europe, and the Middle East. Now, you may ask why? Plainly, to serve, quote, China's ambitions to have overseas storage locations connected with world markets, end of quote. The document further states that CEFC's investments and their bank division has investments in the energy sector, quote, which are in tandem with the government's $4 trillion One Belt, One Road foreign investment program, end of quote. So then, CEFC operated under the guise of a private company, but for all intents and purposes, as an arm of the Chinese government. Hunter Biden and James Biden served as the perfect vehicle by which the communist Chinese government could gain inroads here in the United States through CEFC and its affiliates. And these inroads were focused on Chinese advancement into the global and U.S. energy sector. Hunter and James Biden we're more than happy to go along, of course, for the right price. So now let's turn to the first poster, which shows bank records that hasn't been made public before now. This is a portion of a document that we, meaning Senator Johnson and I, will release in full. The topic of this poster shows a wire transaction, August 4th, 2017, from CEFC to Wells Fargo Clearing Services for $100,000. Now look at the bottom of the poster. This is the underlying data of this transaction. It states, quote, further credit to Owasco, end of quote. Owasco is Hunter Biden's firm. Now, there is no middleman in this transaction. This is $100,000 from what is effectively an arm of the Communist Chinese government direct to Hunter Biden. So a second question to the liberal media and my Democrat colleagues who accused us over the last 2 years of distributing Russian disinformation. Is this official bank document Russian disinformation? Now, beyond this document, in future speeches, Senator Johnson and I will show you more transfers between and among such companies as CEFC, Northern International Capital, Hudson West 3, Hunter Biden's Owasco, and James Biden's Lion Hall Group. In doing so, please keep in mind the players in this game: Hunter Biden, James Biden, Yi Jinping, Gong Wen Dong, Murin Yang, and Patrick Yo, to name a few. All of these individuals mixed and mingled with related corporate entities over a period of years and with respect to millions of dollars. Now, the next poster. Those connections are illustrated by this second poster, which I made public last November. It's an original bank record with one typographical error and all. Here you have Hunter Biden, Gong Wen Dong, and Mervyn Yang executing an assignment and assumption agreement together. Now, a third question to those who accuse us of disseminating Russian disinformation, so especially to the liberal media, who are the ones who ought to be policing our government system to make sure that everything's done honest. They shouldn't have to have members of Congress giving all this information out. But is this official record Russian disinformation? In our next speeches, we'll show you more records that haven't been seen before. Records that undeniably show strong links between Biden family and communist China. Today is just a small taste. I'd like to note one thing before Senator Johnson takes over. He's going to describe to you the ridiculous attacks that we received, claiming that our reports were Russian disinformation. On March the 16th of this year, the New York Times unwittingly substantiated our reports by reporting on Hunter Biden's connection to foreign corporations and his potential criminal exposure. So what Senator Johnson and I made public last Congress is now a prevailing fact pattern that even the liberal media can't ignore any longer and falsely label Russian disinformation. I'll turn it over to Senator Johnson to provide additional examples of the media's attack last Congress. I yield the floor.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. I first want to thank the senior senator from the state of Iowa for his tenacity in pursuing the truth and ignoring all the false attacks leveled against us during the course of our multi-year investigations into corruption at the highest levels of the federal government. Both of us have been firsthand witnesses and at the same time victims of the dishonesty of our Democrat Senate colleagues and their willing accomplices in the media. When it comes to our investigation into the vast web of foreign financial entanglements of the Biden family, those attacks have had one goal in mind: to cover up the extent to which President Biden might be, and almost certainly is, compromised. Over the course of our investigation into how Hunter Biden used his father's position and name to enrich himself and his family, the dishonest press published countless stories reporting on the Democrats' false charge that Senator Grassley and I were soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. Once we issued our September and November 2020 reports, which were based almost exclusively on U.S.-sourced documents and interviews with U.S. citizens, the media largely ignored it. When they did write a story, they declared that our reports found nothing new, a classic media cover-up. I've always said the bias in the media is revealed far more in what they don't report than what they actually do report. But all the false attacks did not deter us. We have continued to uncover the truth, and fortunately, our reports also served as a catalyst for others to come forward and for more investigative journalists to keep digging. The American people deserve the truth. That's why we're presenting additional evidence today and over the next few days. For example, this is the first time this document is being made public. As Senator Grassley described in detail, it shows that money from CEFC, which is effectively an arm of the Chinese government, went directly to Hunter Biden. Bank records like this piece of evidence are pretty hard to deny and sweep under the rug. Our reports were chock full of irrefutable evidence like this, and yet the media buried those details in an attempt to keep it hidden from the American people. Because the mainstream media and our Democrat colleagues had no substance to refute our reports, they reverted to their time-honored tradition of lying, making false accusations against us, and engaging in the politics of personal destruction. Again, their goal was to destroy the credibility of our reports before the American people even had a chance to read them. They were fully aware that the lie can travel halfway around the world before the truth has a chance to put on its shoes. For example, listen to what New York Times journalist Nicholas Fandos said about our report. Quote, "Lack of meaningful new information," unquote. And again, quote, "Overlap with the Russian disinformation campaign," unquote. The then Democrat minority leader was quoted saying about our report, quote, "As if Putin wrote it, not United States senators." A Democrat senator described our investigation as being, quote, "rooted in disinformation," end quote, from Russian operatives. Separately, A Democrat senator also said about our report, quote, "Bottom line, the Johnson-Grassley investigation is baseless. It is laundering Russian propaganda for circulation in the U.S., unquote." But of course, all those quotes were disinformation. Disinformation designed to distract all of us from the truth. Senator Grassley reiterated our reports were based almost exclusively on government records from the Obama administration and transcribed interviews of government officials. So, how did the Democrats and the liberal media allies carry out this false attack on us? We described part of what they did in Section 10 of our September 2020 report. Their disinformation and smear campaign against us in our reports was extensive, but in the interest of time, I'll give you a shorter Cliff Notes version. On July 13, 2020, then Minority Leader Schumer, Senator Warner, Speaker Pelosi, and Representative Schiff sent a letter to the FBI to express a purported belief that Congress was the subject of a foreign disinformation campaign. The letter included a classified attachment that had unclassified elements that attempted to tie Senator Grassley's and my work to Andrei Derkach, a Russian agent. The Democrats speculated that based on this unclassified information, Senator Grassley and I had received materials from Derkach. This was false. Nothing could be further from the truth. But this information, purportedly linking Senator Grassley and I to Derkach, was leaked to liberal media outlets to start a false narrative to smear us. Until news reports of this false allegation surfaced, I had never even heard of Andrei Derkach. We immediately and forcefully denied the false allegation, but Democrats and the media continued to spread the lie. To this day, no one has ever apologized to either of us for spreading that lie, even though it is proven conclusively to be a lie and disinformation. Next, my staff and Senator Grassley's staff did a transcribed interview with George Kent. During that interview, Democrat staff members introduced Derkach's materials into our record. Then Democrat staff members asked Mr. Kent about it. He stated, quote, "What you're asking me to interpret is a master chart of disinformation and malign influence." That was Mr. Kent's evaluation of the Derkach disinformation that Democrats were spreading that they entered into our record. So the actual truth of the matter is that Democrats, not Senator Grassley nor I, introduced known Russian disinformation into our investigatory record. They did the exact thing they were falsely accusing us of doing. Again, not my staff, not Senator Grassley's staff. Democrats were disseminating Russian disinformation, just like they did with the Steele dossier. Then ranking members Wyden and Peters sent me and Senator Grassley a letter asking for an intelligence briefing relating to our investigation. Now, such a briefing was completely unnecessary, but it was an effort by our Democrat colleagues to further falsely taint our investigation, hoping to discredit it and discredit the truth. On July 28, 2020, Senator Grassley and I reminded them that the FBI and relevant members of the intelligence community had already briefed the committees in March of 2020 and assured us that there was no reason to discontinue our investigation. Then in August 2020, Senator Grassley and I were provided a briefing from the FBI, a briefing that we did not request, that was also leaked to the press to further smear us. This unsolicited FBI briefing was also not necessary and was completely irrelevant to the substance of our investigation. The FBI briefers did tell us that they weren't there to, quote, quash, curtail, or interfere, unquote, in our investigation in any way. No government entity ever warned us that our investigation into the Biden family's financial deals was connected to any kind of Russian disinformation campaign, because it wasn't. But again, the substance of that FBI briefing was later leaked and contorted to smear us, which was exactly why we suspect we were given the unsolicited briefing in the first place. Those briefers promised confidentiality. Clearly, that confidentiality was breached and resulted in another smear operation on Senator Grassley and I to deflect allegations of corruption and conflict of interest that could compromise a President Biden. To date, we do not know who all was involved in this smear campaign. But even after repeated requests, Director Wray and Director Haynes have refused to come in and fully explain who requested and directed this briefing and why it was provided. I think we know why it was provided. So to review, senior Democrats and liberal media cooperated to smear me and Senator Grassley with false accusations of receiving and spreading Russian disinformation. They created documents, leaked them, asked for briefings, and then leaked those too. And then they themselves disseminated Russian disinformation. You can't make this up. Fortunately, they failed to discredit our investigation because we stayed true to government records. We stayed true to the facts and the evidence. And the evidence is stunning, and it is growing. Over the next few days, Senator Grassley and I will come to the floor to present additional evidence that has not yet been made public. These records show extensive connections between the Biden family and elements of the communist Chinese regime. We're talking high-dollar transactions, some of which we've already highlighted in our September and November 2020 reports. But our speeches will introduce new financial documents into the record for all to see. Now, we expect Democrats and the media to continue to use their power to smear us and cover up for the Bidens. But the truth has a power of its own, and we intend to continue to reveal the truth. Madam President, I yield the floor.
That objection.
Yesterday, Senator Johnson and I discussed our joint investigation into the Biden family's foreign financial entanglements. We reviewed much of our earlier work and provided a brief preview of the new material. Today, we will give our second speech on our Biden investigation series. Once again, we're going to make public and we're going to describe new financial records relating to Hunter Biden and his connections to the communist Chinese government. Most of that focus will be on his connections to the CEFC, a company that's effectively an arm of the Chinese government. But first, we must go back to 2015. At that time, Hunter Biden served on the board of Burisma and was paid tens of thousands of dollars each month. Its owner was a corrupt, Russian-aligned Ukrainian oligarch. But that's not all that Hunter Biden was up to. In that year, CEFC International announced an agreement with Northern International Capital Holding. Northern International is incorporated in China, and it's very much involved in the energy sector. One of Yi Jinping's companies was the majority shareholder of CEFC International. Northern International purchased $123 million worth of CEFC's shares, binding the two companies together. We must also mention Hudson West 3 and its financial connection to CEFC. Hunter Biden was an investor and a manager of Hudson West 3. He was tasked with advancing its interest. Hudson West 3 also involved Chinese nationals connected to the communist regime, such as Gong Wen Dong, whom I talked about yesterday. Now let's look at this first poster. And I should note that Senator Johnson and I will make these documents public in full. We're providing snapshots for our presentation here on the floor of the United States Senate. Here we have one portion of an LLC agreement from a bank. It shows the companies that have bound themselves together: Hudson West 5, Hudson West 3, and Owasco. Owasco is Hunter Biden's firm. Now let's turn to the second poster. The paragraph at the top shows the purpose for which the LLC agreement exists. So what this tells us is that Hunter Biden and James Biden linked up with companies connected to the communist regime to assist them with finding projects for global and domestic infrastructure energy. And as we know from my and Senator Johnson's report from last August, some energy projects, explorations between the Biden family and China were here in the United States. One example is a multi-million-dollar natural gas project in Louisiana. Now let's move to the next paragraph at the bottom of this same poster, which defines the word affiliate in the agreement. And I want to quote, "For the avoidance of doubt, CFC China Energy Company Limited or any of its affiliates shall be deemed as an affiliate of Hudson," end of quote. Accordingly, this agreement between Hunter Biden's firm and Hudson West 3 and Hudson West 5 directly connect to Hunter Biden to CEFC. So, was this agreement executed? Let's look at this third poster, which contains a signature block executing the agreement. Here we see Hunter Biden's signature with Gong Wen Dong. As previously noted, Gong Wen was an associate of Yi Jinping. Both men were connected to the communist regime, including its military elements. Notably, Hunter Biden worked for Yi Jinping to get him involved in a natural gas project in Louisiana. That project eventually fell through. Now let's bring up a fourth poster labeled Joinder Agreement relating to the LLC agreement. Again, Hunter Biden is signing with Gong Wen Dong with respect to the LLC agreement. Now, accordingly, we can now conclude the following. Hunter Biden was financially connected to CEFC, a company that was an arm of the Communist Chinese regime for the purpose of advancing energy interests. This agreement also shows two additional findings. First, Hunter Biden's responsibility to advance Hudson West 3's interest as of August the 2nd, 2017. Second, Hunter Biden's close associate with Hudson West 3's CEFC and its affiliates as of August the 2nd, 2017. That date is important, as I will show you soon. Let's turn to a fifth poster. On this fifth poster, look at the top. This is a bank record showing an August 8th, 2017 wire transfer from Northern International Capital to Hudson West 3 for $5 million. This is $5 million from a company that's connected to Ying Jingming and CEFC and its affiliates, which are essentially arms of the Communist Chinese regime. And that transfer took place after Hunter Biden became closely associated with Hudson West 3, as the LLC agreement shows. So, what was the money for? As noted, Hunter Biden was working with Chinese nationals linked to the communist regime to help them explore energy projects. Now look at the bottom of this poster. This is a paragraph from the LLC agreement. It shows that Hunter Biden was paid $100,000 per month. James Biden was paid $65,000 per month, and Hunter Biden will be paid a one-time retainer, a fee of $500,000. Again, this is money connected to Hudson West 3, a company connected to CFC and Gong Wen Dong. Both are connected in turn to the Communist Chinese regime. We can now conclude with this respect to James Biden. James Biden was financially connected to CEFC, a company that was an arm of the Communist Chinese regime for the purpose of advancing energy interest. After the LLC agreement was signed, money flowed from CFC and its shareholders into the bank account of Hudson West 3, including the $5 million from Northern International. This LLC agreement was the trigger point for high-dollar financial transactions involving Hunter and James Biden. Now let's turn to poster 6 and view the top. This is Hudson West 3 bank record that shows a wire transfer on August 31st, 2017 for $165,000. Notably, this is the same month as the $5 million wire from Northern International. It is also the same month that Hunter Biden signed the August 2nd, 2017 LLC agreement. The wire is to Wells Fargo Clearing Services. Now look at the bottom of this poster. Senator Johnson and I have acquired more than just the bank statement. We've acquired underlying wire data. So look at the fourth line at the bottom. It says, quote, further credit to Owasco PC, end quote. The underlying wire data shows that it went to Owasco, a Hunter Biden firm. Senator Johnson and I have years of bank records to show multiple $165,000 wire transfers from Hudson West 3 to Owasco. There were also wire transfers for other amounts, some for more, some for less. More likely, some of those payments were for expenses under the LLC agreement. So you have an August 6, 2017 LLC agreement with Hudson West 3 and Owasco, noting $165,000 a month to Hunter Biden. No, that's $100,000 a month to Hunter Biden and $65,000 to James Biden. Then you have an August 8th, 2017 wire transfer of $5 million from Northern International to Hudson West 3. After that August 8th wire, you see years of wire transfers from Hudson West 3 to Hunter Biden's company. The majority of these for $165,000, the exact amount due under the LLC agreement. Based on the timing of the transactions, Hunter Biden and James Biden's payments under the LLC agreement came from that $5 million wire. A wire, mind you, that came from a company connected to Yi Jinping and CEFC, which is an arm of the Chinese government. These years of record show that Hunter Biden and James Biden were more connected to the communist regime's elements than had been previously known. These records place them at the center of Hudson West 3, Gongwen Dong, and CFC. This is a finding that Senator Johnson and I made public in our Biden reports last Congress, the same reports that you found members of the other political party in this body and the liberal press finding fault with, that somehow it was Russian disinformation. So I say this to the liberal media and our Democratic colleagues who tried to smear our work all these years and accuse us of peddling Russian disinformation. You've seen all of these documents that we presented. Are these official bank records Russian disinformation? To our Democratic colleagues and the liberal media, we deserve an answer, because you made several efforts to smear our reputation as we were starting this investigation 2 or 3 years ago. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Senator Johnson to discuss a name that I gave you yesterday, Patrick Ho, and related records to Patrick Ho that we've acquired. Thank you.
Thanks, Senator Grassley.
Senator from Wisconsin.
Thanks, Senator Grassley. As my colleague, the senior senator from Iowa, has shown, Hunter Biden and James Biden received millions of dollars from companies connected to the communist Chinese regime. But frankly, it's worse than that. These companies were effectively an arm of the Chinese government. This isn't Russian disinformation. These are hard facts backed up by bank records of actual financial records and transactions that prove just how connected the Bidens were and how compromised President Biden probably is. I'll use this next series of transactions to prove my point. The first chart here shows a bank record showing a $1 million wire transfer into the account of Hudson West 3 from CEFC Limited on November 2nd, 2017. As Senator Grassley and I have already established, CEFC is effectively an arm of the communist Chinese regime. It is also important to note that at the time of this transfer, in November 2017, Hunter Biden was already invested in and providing management for Hudson West 3. So a company that was effectively an arm of the Chinese government transferred $1 million in November 2017 to a company that Hunter Biden is managing and is invested in. Let's bring up the second record. Focus on the $1 million wire out on March 22nd, 2018. Again, this is a record from Hudson West 3's bank account. Like the previous record, this is showing the transfer of $1 million, but this time the money is being transferred out of Hudson West 3 to Owasco, another one of Hunter Biden's firms. This transfer took place on March 22nd, 2018, a little less than 5 months after the $1 million transfer from CEFC to Hudson West 3. Hunter is transferring $1 million between two firms he manages and has ownership in. So what is the purpose of these two $1 million transfers? This next record seems to answer that question. This record shows Owasco's receipt of the March 22, 2018 $1 million transfer. It also shows what the transfer is for on the OBI line. OBI is an abbreviation for Originating Beneficiary Information. It's like the memo line on your personal check. It tells you really what that check was about. In this case, the OBI indicates the transfer is being made for, quote, Dr. Patrick Ho Chi Ping representation, unquote. So to recap, on November 2nd, 2017, Patrick Ho's company, CEFC, wired $1 million to Hunter Biden's company, Hudson West 3. On March 22nd, 2018, Hudson West 3 wired $1 million to Owasco, another Hunter Biden company. The bank record clearly states the $1 million payment was being made for the purpose of representing Patrick Ho. Represent him for what? Here's where things get interesting. We know that Patrick Ho was arrested by U.S. authorities in November 2017 for international bribery and money laundering charges. Keep in mind that this arrest occurred in the same month that Patrick Ho's company, CEFC, is wiring $1 million to Hunter Biden's company, Hudson West 3. According to the Department of Justice, quote, Ho orchestrated and executed two bribery schemes to pay top officials of Chad and Uganda in exchange for business advantages for CEFC China, a Shanghai-based multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that operates in multiple sectors, including oil, gas, and banking, end quote. These are crimes for which Patrick Ho was eventually convicted and sent to federal prison for committing. So the company that Patrick Ho was making bribes for sends $1 million to a company Hunter Biden manages and is invested in. That company in turn transfers $1 million to another Hunter Biden company for the purposes of representing Patrick Ho, who was eventually convicted of international bribery and money laundering. And guess what Patrick Ho did around the same time he's arrested by the FBI for corruption and bribery? He contacted James Biden, President Biden's brother. Patrick Ho's decision to call the Biden family around the same time he got arrested is revealing, particularly in light of the fact that the same month $1 million just happened to be transferred to Hunter Biden's company. Now, Hunter Biden isn't a criminal defense attorney. Patrick Ho was charged and convicted for bribery, and related federal offenses and crimes. So what kind of representation was Patrick Ho's company paying Hunter Biden's firm to provide? Were they paying for his firm's legal expertise or for Hunter's political connections? In March 2021, Senator Grassley and I asked the Justice Department about Patrick Ho. Why? Because there's a federal court filing that says the department has FISA records on Patrick Ho. We requested these records. In response, the department would not confirm whether they even had his records. Unfortunately, the Attorney General refuses to clarify that outrageous contradiction for Congress. Oh, and one more tidbit. In a recently uncovered audio extracted from his laptop, Hunter Biden referred to Patrick Ho as, quote, the expletive-deleted spy chief of China, unquote. Let that sink in a minute. Hunter Biden referred to Patrick Ho in an audio as the, quote, expletive-deleted spy chief of China, unquote. This quote alone tells you that Hunter Biden knew exactly who he was dealing with. He knew exactly who he was dealing with. He was dealing with the, quote, expletive-deleted spy chief of China. Now that fact should alert the media and our Democrat colleagues to seriously consider the implications the Biden family's vast web of foreign financial entanglements have in the conduct of this administration's foreign policy and our national security, but I'm not holding my breath. In October 2020, Senator Grassley and I requested to interview Hunter and James Biden about their financial dealings. If they had nothing to hide, they could have volunteered to come in and sit for an interview. If there was an innocent explanation for these foreign financial transactions, they could have used that interview to clarify what those transactions were about. Unfortunately, rather than being transparent, honest, and forthcoming, they declined to speak for us or to us. Their silence speaks volumes. Fortunately, facts are stubborn things. As the Bidens, our Democrat colleagues, and the media is learning, it is difficult to keep them hidden forever. Senator Grassley and I will continue to investigate the Biden family's foreign financial entanglements and provide the American people with the truth to the best of our ability. Our challenge is the deep state does not give up its secrets easily. New evidence of Biden family influence peddling is surfacing on a regular basis, often coming from records from Hunter Biden's laptop. The same laptop, by the way, that the media and deep state foreign intelligence agency officials strongly inferred, was, you guessed it, Russian disinformation. And their guile worked. Prior to the election, people bought the fact that that laptop was probably Russian disinformation. It wasn't, as the New York Times just admitted about a year too late, more than a year too late, that laptop is authentic, and the evidence it is producing is real. But of course, that laptop wasn't Russian disinformation, nor is any of the information we presented in our reports and here on the floor of the Senate. We may never know all the details of the Biden family foreign entanglements or the full extent to which those entanglements compromise our current president, but I'm pretty confident I know who does know. Intelligence operatives in Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea. Elements within our U.S. intelligence agencies probably also know. They're just not going to tell us or you, the American people. Senator Grassley and I will return for our third speeches in this series on the Biden family's foreign financial entanglements. Until then, Mr. President, I yield the floor.